Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, being part of a webinar that I'm very excited to be hosting. As you can see from your screen right now, it's called Omnichannel Alchemy. Alchemy, yes, indeed. We're going to see how we can turn those base metals into gold, or as you can see from the bottom of your screen right now, perhaps a better description is turning a great launch party into a sustained success. And why did we choose to do that, I wonder? Well, I think that there's a huge amount of emphasis on launch. We all know how important launch is. But what we're also struggling with is how to convert that into something that, a party that lasts for more than one night, if you might like to put it that way, to convert that energy and excitement into something that really, really makes a difference years from that initial inception. And what we're really going to focus on today is so much about how we can make omnichannel relatively straightforward rather than the complex, sophisticated, aspirational thing that it often is for us in these situations. So I'm really excited that we're going to be doing this today. We've got more than 600 of you signed up. And if you haven't done already, in fact, I can see only one person has, please introduce yourself in that chat window. Let's make this a conversation, not just a one-way street. I want everyone that's listening right now to be a part of this webinar, to be answering the questions along with the panelists, and to make this a dialogue. So write in, tell us where perhaps you're calling in from, and maybe even tell us what specifically you would like to have answered during this session. Let me introduce you to the wonderful people who are going to be with me on today's conversation. So firstly, we've got Nuvan. He is the SVP Digital and Marketing Strategy and Operations at Accord Biopharma. He has got a history of propelling brand growth and innovation across multiple markets globally. He's got a lot of experience, digital transformation, and even patient engagement. He's very much a recognized speaker and advisor, and we're very lucky to have him here. Thank you so much, Nuvan, for being a part of this. Dana is Senior Director, Precision Marketing at Syros. She is a seasoned leader in precision medicine marketing. That's what we like to hear. And has a lot of experience, different roles, AstraZeneca. Dana has quite a lot of expertise when it comes to various types of omnichannel marketing and, of course, that precision medicine, really focusing on advancing targeted healthcare solutions, being very helpful to our customers and our patients, as well as innovative marketing across oncology and diagnostics. Anil is from Azentech, and he's a managing partner there. We are really, really pleased that Anil and his colleagues, particularly Swati and Ashish and the wonderful team, have decided to take part in this webinar. Indeed, if it wasn't for them, this webinar wouldn't be happening. Really enjoyed actually working with the team, highly recommended. Anil himself is an innovator. He's been responsible for driving innovation and strategy across digital marketing and product solutions for both pharma and also publishing and media sectors. He's got 18 years that he's been with Azentech, and he's led the company there to a lot of sustained growth, serving, of course, many Fortune 500 clients. He's got experience in B2B publishing, in SEO, healthcare portals. Absolutely marvelous that you can join us, Anil. Martin is Executive Director of US and Global Oncology Marketing at Regeneron. Obviously, Regeneron, a very exciting company to be at. 25 years from him in biotech and pharma, specializing in oncology and inflammation and infectious diseases. Strong track record in launching across blockbuster brands, as well as niche biologics and biosimilars. A lot of experience across commercial strategy, new product planning, and of course, global marketing. So I think you could argue we have a pretty tip-top panel for you today. But before we get them to talk, I would like to just remind you that when you signed up for today's webinar, well, actually, I'm going to remind you of two things. Firstly, that everybody is speaking from their own personal perspective and not necessarily representing their company today. Secondly, we are recording today's session. You don't need to ask me for a recording. It will be sent to you afterwards, so all good there. And thirdly, you can see on your screen right now the results of the question you asked when you signed up. That question, how do you perceive the role of omnichannel strategies in your current marketing approach? So you can see a really interesting ratio there. 0% of people saying overhyped and not necessary for our market. So I guess we're in the right room, everybody. But 50% of people describing it as essential, not just important, but essential, and not even a key priority, but essential. So I think that we all know where each other stands. That's good to know. And then I asked a second question, which was this: what's the biggest challenge you face in maximizing impact of your promotional efforts? You can see a much more even spread this time, but the winner with 30% difficulty in measuring ROI across multiple channels, followed closely by nearly a quarter of people saying lack of internal omnichannel capability and expertise. Well, interesting. Perhaps you need a good partner. And certainly we've got one of those with us today. So very interesting results. But before I let our panel come on board, there's going to be one more question to ask right from the outset. So number one, this is a two-part question, by the way. Number one, what is your primary goal for pursuing omnichannel initiatives in your organization? It kind of sounds like an obvious question, but one that we never ask. What is your primary goal for pursuing omnichannel initiatives in your organization? I'll let you read and select. And then the second question, which of the following best describes your team's current approach to omnichannel planning for launches? So again, I can let you read the responses there, but you've got a nice range of options between yourselves. Okay, while you're answering that, I'll hold that open for another minute or two. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to start asking our panel to turn the cameras on, please, and join me here. Marvelous, marvelous. Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate you all being here. I can see the polls going pretty well. So I think before everyone speaks, I'm just going to hold the poll open for another 5 seconds, and then we can actually see the results before we talk. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you to everybody there. Let's have a quick look at the results then, shall we? We've got a winner on the first question. To improve customer journeys and provide the right information when needed. It's the right time, right place argument for 2/5 of people. Perhaps no surprises there, but I'm actually surprised almost by some of the ones that didn't get chosen. So short-term sales performance, the financial goals are not particularly interesting beyond 1% of the audience here. Internal efficiency only getting 2% of the vote as well. The second question, which of the following describes your current approach? We've got about 30% of people saying prioritize omnichannel early in our launch planning, and 31 including omnichannel as an add-on. That's interesting. I expected that to be much lower, that add-on option. So interesting that that has been the winner there. So people are not necessarily starting with omnichannel from the outset. I find that quite interesting. Okay, panel, it's your turn now. You've heard some rabbiting on from me. I would love to just get your opinions, as I said, on what you would regard as the big challenges. And, you know, what is stopping you in your organization getting as far into this omnichannel journey as you would personally like to, given that it's now nearly the end of 2024? We've certainly been trying to do this for, well, since the beginning of the pandemic at the very least. Why is it still such a challenge 4.5 years on from that moment? Go for it.
Yeah, I think in my experience across multiple organizations, I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is really aligning internal stakeholders. So I think as you think about, driving it through omnichannel approach, you have to deal with a slew of internal folks, including you have the brand marketing team, the IT department, the advanced analytics group. You also have to, in most organizations, you have a center of excellence or an omnichannel strategy group or digital team. So I think getting alignment on the strategy, kind of the plans around the brand, I think that's critical. And I think as you deal with all the stakeholders, you have to have a very clear patient journey and strategy where you align the key behaviors or change you need to make for your customers in terms of content and messages. And I think the other piece in terms of the challenge is that we may have a cross-functional team and a lot of stakeholders involved, but finding who's the real conductor on that team. Is it driven by the brand? Is it the person that's owning digital programming? So figure out who's your champion and who's going to lead the process and lead the team across the road. That's really critical, I think, in terms of having success. So that's probably, I would say, one of the big challenges we have to deal with, especially in complex organizations.
internal champions, internal sponsors, internal encouragement. To me, it seems crazy that we are still having to convince our leaders that this is the way forward, given the experiences we have across other industries. But that's my opinion, and I'm not there doing it. Dana and Nuvan, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with Martin entirely. I think getting that stakeholder buy-in across anyone who engages with our customers, whether that's HCPs or patients, or whether that's someone who has to do with how people are engaging, like medical, legal reviews, things like that. But on top of that, I think another big challenge is understanding what data we have available and how we can leverage that data to support those engagements and the communication that our customers need. And I think a lot of the times we look at all the data that we have, because pharma companies, in my experience, diagnostic companies, we have lots of data. We have sales data, we have digital data, we have data coming out of our CRM, we have data that's directly related to a physician at a physician level data. Piece, we have data that's not. We have quantitative data, we have qualitative data, and it's really aggregating that data in a way so that it can be well orchestrated to create that omni-channel experience. And I think being able to understand your data, being able to put that data into something like a customer data platform so that you can create HCP profiles, but then the biggest challenge is then analyzing that data. And I think a lot of the times you have to start with building that data platform the correct way so that analysis can be quite easy.
Okay. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Data, absolutely. I want to hear from Nuvan, and I also want to hear from every one of you who are listening right now. What are your reasons why you think this has been more difficult to bring to reality than it should have been? Nuvan.
Yeah, I think based on what Martin, which is the internal stakeholder alignment, and Dana, how do you parade through the data that is siloed? I think the other challenge most organizations face, at least in my experience, as launch windows get shrunken, right? We started with 18 to 24 months to launch to now 8 months to launch. The role of omni-channel in launch excellence gets lost and becomes a much more a tactical conversation in shrinking timelines and shrinking budgets. So that then moves into a tactical punch list, like websites, rep-triggered emails to call center or patient hub services, versus that answer that the most of your participants told, the patient journeys or the customer journeys, and getting the right information at the right time in a unified experience gets lost. So I think the practitioners like us are also to blame, because we get forced to becoming tactical, and it becomes a feedback loop that then mires us. And that kind of answers your question. We are still in 2024 and people are still talking about internal alignment.
And just give me some understanding of the frustration. You're obviously a senior leader in the organization. And does it frustrate you that the conversation becomes tactical, or do you think it's a frustration that we're not working with some of the other processes and the other, it's our market access process, etc., that's not then giving us enough time? We're not maybe starting early enough, pre-approval. What's the reason for this such a condensed window that seems to be having multiple negative side effects?
That's a good question. So the way I look at it is I think we all have this role as a leader to kind of be proactive and work with the end in mind. Launches where you start with the end in mind, in my opinion, have really shown omni-channel to deliver the results, versus launches where you're not proactive, or the market access team is proactive first, kind of getting the access, especially in a market like the US, or working with large government bodies or tender markets in Europe, where then marketers become, or digital omni-channel becomes kind of after the payers and after the commercial contracting teams. That's where I think omni-channel gets segregated into a punch list of things that you want to get done. The other piece that I would recommend, I think what Dana mentioned is key. It's the data that orchestrates those journeys and orchestrates, I'm going to use a cliche word here, next best action. Most vendors you work with, I'm talking on the data side, on the sales side, they all talk a good game on the next best action, but I think it takes a marketer, and I'm very biased just because I come from that background, are the ones who are best equipped to orchestrate the next best action, especially if you have a field force or a contract field force where the commercial team thinks the next best action is getting that script filled in the shortest amount of time. There's so many, I use the word here internally, the invisible labor that goes in that makes sure that that script gets completed. I think the more, this is again very opinionated and very personal opinion, I think more proactive, lean forward, omni-channel folks, I think is what it takes today in these shrinking timelines and shrinking budgets to really show up differently than others. I'll say last thing and I'll keep quiet. Like those who have watched The Social Network, the movie of the Facebook, I think there's a scene in the movie, I think it happens at Harvard, where the question is, how do you be different in a class of 1,600 SATs? Meaning we all are experts in our game, but bad news, we all do what we are used to doing. So how do you be different? I think that's where I think being your leadership skills and your ability to lean forward and take a risk with your vendor partners, that helps you.
Well, some of us, Nuvan, can only aspire to such academic achievements, but I very much hear your point. Thank you. Anil, you are someone who gets to see across cloud. And by the way, thank you so much to everyone who's writing in the chat. Please keep those comments coming. We'll maybe address a couple of them in a moment. But Anil, you get to see across clients, as I say, and it would be really interesting to hear your perspective on this as well. Where do you see the frustrations? Where do you see the rough edges that are being surfaced and shown to you?
No, great point. I mean, all the panelists made great points, and those are the important points because that's where the decisions are made. But from the outside, we have worked across the board for more than a decade, and I think the partner ecosystem has yet to do a good job in explaining what omnichannel is. There's a clear lack of and concise understanding. Omnichannel fundamentally is an interplay, right, between channels, data, analytics, and optimized operations. It has to go across the journey. There is a lot of times we come across as a perception where omnichannel is perceived as that silver bullet, that one project, that one activity which gets you to the next level. It's not. It's a mindset. It's a cross-department alignment and commitment to an omni-channel. And I'm so happy that we're talking about customer journeys and customers as a very important part, which came out in the poll that you just conducted. How would you orchestrate customers interacting with you across various different channels? And many times within an organization, each channel is managed by a different stakeholder. So how do you bring that interplay? And I think as an industry, especially as it pertains to life sciences, I mean, we all make the example of Amazon and Facebook, but the regulatory environment under which we operate, omnichannel has a very different ways of working within life sciences. And coming from that understanding and still aspiring for that interplay between channels, data, ultimately going for that unified, superior customer experience. I think that simplicity is lacking in understanding. The good news is that the technology has caught up. So there's a lot that we can do now, much more affordably and much more scalably. So I think that industry's aspiration to be overnight an Amazon, kind of an omnichannel, but not understanding or eventually understanding that we are in a highly regulated environment. So how do you balance, how do you create the omnichannel for life sciences? I think that having that clear, concise understanding will help the entire ecosystem probably make faster progress.
I think you're right to point out, Anil, that we have to be quite grateful our audience that, in answer to that first question, indeed, as you point out, put the customer first, and over our own performance, as obviously that comes as a strong side effect. But we also heard, and I'd be keen on everyone's opinions on this very briefly. We also saw in the poll that 31% of people said we include omnichannel as an add-on to our main launch strategy. Now, are you guys with me on that? Does that feel a little bit backward to me? Does that feel a little, we need to be better than that? Would you agree? Any comments on that?
Yeah, I think omni-channel, it's a buzzword, right? People hear it all the time and they think it's just a form of marketing, but really it's how you engage with your customers. And if you're thinking about launch success, if you're thinking about sustained success, you need to think about how you're engaging with your customers and putting your customers at the center. Thinking about what their needs are and making sure that you're creating content, strategy to personalize their needs where they are too. So understanding someone may be in awareness, not really understanding your brand, and they deserve a different type of message and content than someone who is a loyalist, perhaps even a KOL who really understands your brand and wants to know. And I think content's extremely important. So yeah, I definitely think putting it as an add-on can get scary, because while a lot of teams have one strategy and they build towards it, if they're, as Martin was saying, if they're all kind of creating their own tactics and silos, you're not going to give the customer the experience of this. I think Nuvan mentioned it, this unified customer experience where you're providing content that's a story that unfolds over time, and that you want to make sure with omnichannel specifically that as the customers engage with the different channels they engage with, they're not seeing the same content when they go to social media and the website. They're seeing the next content that makes more sense for them to continue to unfold that story.
Martin.
Yeah, I think, Paul, one of the challenges, but also the opportunities, is really to integrate the kind of the omni-channel approach early on in your planning process as you prepare to develop a launch strategy, including the team, the stakeholders in the development of the strategy, but also have an alignment in terms of your investment level by channel. So if you decide we're going to spend X amount of money towards our sales force, X amount of money towards congresses, but then you need to figure out how much you're going to spend in terms of your digital media and all that. That's got to be fully integrated. And then the earlier on you have a plan and alignment with the team, I think the better off you are in terms of the execution.
Well, it turns out, Martin, thank you for that, that I've got a question for the audience on exactly that point, how you allocate your resources. So in a second, when it finally arrives, it should ping onto your screen. And this one's actually a three-parter. I'm really pushing our audience here. But, data is useful, as we've talked. So how does your organization prioritize resources for omnichannel initiatives within the broader marketing budget? And I've given you a full range there. I'm not sure if any of them fully touched on what Martin was just mentioning, but do your best. Second, how would you describe the level of support? Are you getting that leadership buy-in? Are you getting that strength across where you need it to be? And then finally, where's the biggest barrier to gaining cross-functional support for omnichannel? We've not talked too much about cross-functional stuff right now, but we definitely do want to be busting some silos as well. So 3 parts there. I'll let you guys, I'll hold that open actually for a while, and we'll maybe look at the answers in a bit. Anil, would you be able to move on to the next section? It's actually me that's got the slides to pull up, so I'll do that. Can you see your slides, Anil?
Yes, I do.
Perfect. Okay.
Wonderful.
Take it away.
Yeah. First of all, Paul, thanks for moderating the discussion. It's really generating a lot of robust commentary and questions. So I'm going to attempt at our point of view from some of the low-hanging fruits that we just talked and the panelists mentioned. So we at Ascentech have been witnessing, like Dana said, the evolution of digital, and then it became multi-channel, and now we call it omnichannel, for more than a decade. And as we stand today, and from the registration survey, from the comments that we get, one thing is clear: the majority of the marketers subscribe to the idea that omnichannel is essential. I was going to say strategically important, but essential. While it persists, challenges persist. I mean, we have implementation challenges, we have measurement challenges. So what we are looking at when in the last decade plus, when we absolutely understand every client of ours is uniquely positioned, but just to simplify, as a part to your alchemy that we are trying to do, we look at this broad industry and we said, okay, how do you classify, create a framework to self-assess? Where are we? So on the top right quadrant, the omnichannel optimizers, that's the holy grail, that's the promised land. Everybody wants to get there. But starting from the bottom left corner, most organizations in our observation today in 2024 have moved away from the pure classic brand marketers, traditional, deeply rooted in the traditional channels, and are somewhere closer. But in that moving away from the classic brand marketer position, we more than often see two types. So one are the data enthusiasts, who rightfully go deep in data with limited channels, so they don't want to go all out in all the channels. But in their discipline of data, sometimes they lose out the opportunity to fully exploit the cost-effective reach and frequency that can be achieved with what we call as the right mix of priority channels. I mean, COVID proved that, and we are in a phase where only traditional channels don't cut it in terms of reach, in terms of access to HCP offices, in terms of budgets, and in terms of even timelines on how soon we need to get commercial milestones. We also come across a lot of channel enthusiasts who do activate a multitude of channels. I mean, sometimes I've been asked this question in conferences: how many minimum channels constitute an omni-channel? And that therein lies the flaw, where they have focused more on having multiple channels, but they lack attention to data integrability, which in turn, limits their ability to effectively utilize omnichannel for that one key goal, which is that unified superior customer experience. So irrespective of where you are on the spectrum, our approach is, and Nuwan earlier mentioned, with shrinking timelines, and we work with clients who are very conscious about how, with every successful milestone, they are going to spend in capital investment. So our approach of build to fit and build to skate, we created some very high level key guidelines. So focus on priority channels. I think the first thing is omnichannel strategy is not about number of channels, but it's more about how channels work with each other to get that holy grail. Extensible and integrable technology. I've been a technologist for 30 years now, and I can say that technology is not the rate limiting factor. So as we sit today, we choose the right technologies, we can significantly throttle the capital investments. We don't need to build Rome and people will come. We have, technology has a roadmap and scale, so we can throttle the capital investments based on the milestones. But we also are uniquely positioned today where we can throttle these investments and invest in technologies with a view for future proofing. So we are not going for short-term solutions. We are still having a view for the long term on how the brand is going to grow and how the technology needs to scale up. But those opportunities are available today. Lastly, the data-first architecture. Dana spoke a lot about data. I mean, having a consistent discipline to ensure that all channels are generating adequate data. I call it adequate data because there is more data that we as a species generate now in a day than the entire our existence has. But more data is not always good. So out of the gate, there has to be a defined data to insights pathway. If we say bring it on, and we don't have a clear definition of the end goal, what insights do we need to derive, we would get lost in a data swamp where we are always trying to figure out. And even with AI, while those advancements are going to be coming and making our ability to ingest data easier with time, data to insights pathway is also ever evolving. At launch, you have different milestones and awareness, and as you get deeper, you may have switch milestones, you may have adoption and loyalist milestones. So your insights framework is going to evolve. And that thinking should not be an afterthought. I think we all marketers, and Juan alluded to that, Martin alluded to that, is that pre-planning should kind of identify at a high level with the brand adoption journey on what's our insights framework, because that gives you the discipline not only to bring in right manageable data, which is insights driven, but also look at the technological implementations that you're making to make sure that they are meeting your minimum benchmark of what data you need to actively orchestrate omnichannel. So that's the framework on self-assessment and some key guidelines that we apply ourselves every time we work with the brand, no matter where they're in their life cycle. So if you want to go to the next slide. So we all know, I mean, leading up to launch and even after launch, but there is almost like an S curve, right? So we have to work with strategy and content. AORs play a tremendous role here. We have to lean on third-party media opportunities to get to where the HCP eyeballs or the patient eyeballs are. And brand marketers typically in this time are overwhelmed with a multitude of work streams. Working across these key partners like AOR Media and point solution partners, maybe for KOL programs, maybe for webinars. So there is a lot of these momentum activities that are happening, and they'll kind of taper off after the initial launch party. What we are talking about today in this webinar is how do we look for sustain. So if you click one more time, and I think this is where in that forward thinking would help, is as you're engaging your AORs and content and creative, as you're working with your media partners, as you're working with your point solutions, if you have a parallel process where you're looking at your own capabilities, and we spoke a little bit about the whole build to fit, build to scale approach, what it allows you to do is, if you click one more time, create a omnichannel orchestration, which will now be picking up the load, and it seamlessly transitions from higher dependency only on high cost spends on third parties, but have your own capabilities mature up. And this cannot be an afterthought. The more of an afterthought it is, the bigger the lift is, as long as it's parallel. So having internal champions or almost a designated partner role, because we are talking about an interdisciplinary work stream. Omnichannel, by the nature of the name itself, is interdisciplinary. And more than often, we have seen that marketing departments are the internal champions, but they need a lot of early socialization. So they can coordinate between various internal partners, external partners, and have that vision stated clearly that this is the brand's omnichannel point of view. The function would then ensure that the technology being implemented, the own capabilities being activated, the data being collected from both the own channels and the external partners, is done in alignment for that optimized and sustained omnichannel orchestration. So for example, when reps hit the ground and marketing activities and awareness go live, how can both channels work in synchronicity from day one, from the get-go, to get a higher overall return? Customer consent collection, that's the heart of it all, because if you want to have a sustained operation, from every tactic that you build, you want to know that you are able to create a robust consent database, so that eventually as you transition, and not only that you have a deeper insight into your audience, but then you can have your own omnichannel, create that always 24/7 on without kind of breaking the bank. So if you go to the last slide, again, this is very high level. I absolutely understand that working with each brand, it warrants a deeper conversation to see what therapeutic area they are, the competitive landscape, the patient population, the whole 9 yards. But at a very high level, we kind of spoke about it, and I'm going to spell it out in more clarity. Integrated strategy and planning. It is the forward thinking. It is the adoption of the omnichannel point of view and then working towards it. So defining the overall brand goals and having an omnichannel orchestration champion. Without that champion who's going to drive, whether it comes from marketing department, it's a centralized function, but that function is very critical to create that individual initiatives have a common goal. And more importantly, start with a measurement framework from the get-go. So we know that these are the milestones. This is how we are going to get the measurement done. And that analysis has to be a forethought. Fortunately, for data and technology, I'm so excited as a technologist that we are evolving competitively on a daily basis. What used to be $1 million tactic in the past can now be implemented for less than $100,000, which empowers all us marketers to leverage technology. So I'm going to say it again, technology is never going to be the rate limiting factor. However, selecting the right stack, which is both CFO friendly and CIO friendly. And I think many of us, from a pure marketing background, we lack that technical depth, and a lot of the technology gets into like a battle with the CIO's office from a governance perspective, from a data safety, and those are the places where having an effective partner who can intersect at the business and technology and making that right technology stack selection, it goes a long way. Always subscribe to Build to Fit. We don't need to design for the next 10 years because we don't know what is going to happen in 2 years. And COVID proved us on how we need to be nimble. And that's where we strongly subscribe to Build to Fit, Build to Scale. And the last one, and we talked a lot about it, and I think this is mission critical, which is an efficient partner ecosystem. I think a lot of times the industry approaches omnichannel as binary, like one person can do it all, one company can do it all, everything can be done internally. And I think that mindset needs to be challenged because it's omnichannel and we live in a very diverse industry. So we have to make sure that we'll be working with a variety of partners, but having a cross-functional team which can operate, as I alluded earlier, between the business needs and the technology needs, and add in a layer of financial discipline, fiscal discipline, will allow for an efficient partner ecosystem management. Efficient partner ecosystem management will lead to the holy grail, the optimized marketing capabilities. So I covered a lot in there, and obviously this is a prolonged discussion, has to be customized for each brand, but I think it's not as complicated. We are at a place in time where omnichannel can be simplified and it can be implemented without breaking the bank and in a timely fashion. Thanks, Paul. I hope that was helpful for the team.
Yeah, very helpful. And what you said made a lot of sense, Anil. So thank you so much for sharing. I personally really liked the graph and showing that the owned media channels can almost take over when that initial launch and media splash has died down. One thing I may have missed, I didn't understand perfectly, Anil, if you can just help me understand, what is the investment you need to be making in those owned media channels at the very beginning of the launch in order that it then gathers that momentum and strength later on?
Absolutely. I think the investment is more incremental. So it depends upon, are you T-6, T-12 at launch? So when we say priority channels, for us, the priority channels are the table stake. I mean, face-to-face is a channel, reps, whether you're going to launch with an internal team, contract team, or a call center. Rep-triggered emails, another part, one-to-one communication. It's a key channel. When you add on, we all live in a world where we need a web presence, a digital web, where that becomes the destination tactic. We need marketing automation or home office HQ emails. So these four are your absolute table stakes. The issue is that these implementations are, most cases we see, are being made, but they are not being made from an omnichannel point of view. So for example, the HCP master itself is not necessarily synchronized between sales and marketing. Therein lies a huge flaw. You have a different definition for your customer from a sales ops perspective and a different definition from a marketing ops. So if you want to create a unified journey across these channels for that HCP customer, move them from awareness to trialists to adoption ladder, the loyalists, I think that's the mindset. So when you start with it, you create a foundational data layer, but you also make sure that your individual investments, which you're kind of making anyways, are tied into that omnichannel. So when you're building a website, are you making sure that your consent collection is mapped right in? Are you making sure that your analytics platform is collecting the right data so that the rep would be able to be informed saying, hey, this doc is actually coming to the website. This dog has downloaded this PDF, patient information. So that level of integration. So the investments are going to be optimized, and the architecture is where the investment is. And maybe there is a data foundation layer that needs to start. And again, that is a build to fit, build to scale. We don't need a huge data lake on day one, but we need a roadmap where our today's data expands to a data lake.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. I'm a big believer in agility and starting, and I appreciate what you're saying. Okay. Panel, I would love to hear your thoughts on how we turn what Anil's saying, assuming that you're aligned with his message, into reality. I'd also like to share the results of the poll question that I put up just before Anil was speaking. So when that finally allows me to, I will share the results. Just quickly, the first question: how does your organization prioritize resources? The biggest amount was we don't have a structured approach. I guess that's a slightly haphazard answer from nearly 2/5 of the audience there. Secondly, how would you describe the level of support for omnichannels? Actively invested is the winning, with only a third, though, I have to say. So you might hope that even though it's at the top, might be better than what it is right now. And then finally, what do you see as the biggest barrier? You can see a range of options there. 3 of them kind of hitting over 20%. So compliance and MLR, limited internal experience or resources, and then finally misalignment of objectives, which scores higher than I expected. So yeah, interesting results there. So panel, your reactions to Anil, your reactions to the poll, and how do we actually hit the ground running with this stuff? What's the priority?
I'll take a first stab. So first, reacting to what Anil showed. Obviously, I mean, alignment for the points. I think the key takeaways is just don't focus on launch, or just don't focus on pre-launch. It's a journey, right, of 1,000 steps. So yes, your fiscal year gets run year by year, but have a roadmap into, if you use this example of that data lake, in year 3, you're going to have a CDP or a data lake. So how do you get there fiscal year 1, fiscal year 2, fiscal year 3? That again drives the impetus for alignment. If that data capability rests with internal IT for the infrastructure, gain in alignment. Is it a CapEx spend? Is it an OpEx spend? Which of the OpEx hits your budget or someone else's budget? That kind of forward thinking and planning to execute would also help, even if you're in this game to launch and sell. That also helps to drive your multiple in the appreciation of the molecule you're marketing. I think that's number one. I think number 2, the foundations. I think your question, Paul, on earned media and Anil's answer on prioritizing which channels. Again, we do this for our molecules that we market, because we have clinical teams that are working on product development life cycles. So the challenge then is, how come omnichannel or omnichannel marketers, or whoever that is, you don't have a PDLC, a product development life cycle strategy here? That again goes to your question on your survey, right? If it's ad hoc, that means there is no overarching theme, because it's capability, people, processes. Your capabilities are going to be franchise agnostic, whatever therapeutic franchise you're going to have. How you apply those may differ from franchise to franchise. Dermatology versus oncology, for example, right? There's different nuances on your application. And then the last thing I'll go into is the kind of the allocation. That's your second question with MLR and all that. So it takes a village, unfortunately. If this was easy, everyone else would be doing it. This is what I tell my kids, right? So it's not easy. However, it is not impossible either. And you can see the gains, right? So how do you see the gains? Approximation to market share points. Obviously, approximation for script lift. approximation for patients switching into your brand and switching out of your brand, right? Which can be lagging data. Now, this is very US-centric data I'm sharing, but in a European context, again, market share gains, right, can be approximated into driving those. We all come from worlds where we do market mix modeling, right? So what is stopping us from developing certain methodologies and models to actually see? The bad news, year one, you got to do everything because you are learning. But year two, you get that feedback loop that helps you, to Anil's point, really hone down your channels. When I say doing everything in year one, parity with the competition, if you're a number 2, number 3, number 4 molecule coming in, right? And also within parity or with the competition, looking, do you need to be parity or can you avoid that? Because the competitor is already providing that service, but how can you still come in doing a fast follower? So I think those are my comments based on your 2 questions and Anil's deck.
Thank you, Nivan. I like the support of being a fast follower, not always a terrible thing. Martin, I think you have something.
Paul, if I may, I want to expand on what Anil was saying about build to scale. So I really like that concept. And I think one of the things I'd like to challenge our listeners is the concept of experimentation. So in terms of developing pilot projects, so as you move into your launch phase, I think you're going to do all your table stakes, but I think you can potentially identify some areas in terms of maybe it's different by indication, geography, or customers in terms of where they are in the adoption journey, but try different types of projects. Reserve some funding for experimentation. So you can do different types of initiative where you can do a test and control group, and you can see the results and see how that impacts the brand and the performance. And then you can scale up if you have positive results, and you can pick and choose what's working and what's not working. So I think one of the things is how you innovate is just small incremental things that you may try that's unique. And the whole concept of experimenting allows you to do that and measure it the right way. So I would really challenge the team to think about looking at that approach as you move forward beyond the launch timeframe.
Yeah, Dana.
Yeah, I think sometimes omnichannel sounds like it's a massive undertaking. Just hearing the word, you're kind of like, gosh, what does that mean? But I think if you can really dive down to deciding what channels can I integrate, what actually connects, how can I make that unified message come across to my customers across those channels, you can build small, and you can start collecting that data. And I think Anil touched on this, Nivan touched on this as well, is you bring that data in, and then year 2, you learn from that data. And maybe that's after a year's worth of data, you can start applying next best action. And prior to that, business rules and strategy. And I think it was Nivan who said, marketers build those kind of strategies, right? And so I think don't think of it as a large thing that you have to take on. Think of it in small pieces. Understand what data you need, understand what channels you can leverage, and how they integrate. And Anil is amazing at this, because I think a lot of the times people think omnichannel is just digital, and it's not, right? It's anytime you touch and engage with a customer. And the field is huge for that. And I saw a comment in the chat, I think, around medical. There's peer-to-peer groups. There's in the precision medicine industry, there's diagnostic liaisons. There's your sales force out there as well. And they're all engaging with our customers, and they're capturing insights. And those insights can be used for pulling into something like a customer data platform through the CRM to understand what engagement should come out in the next channel, in the digital channel, and the channels that they may prefer or engage with elsewhere. But also the field can learn things that come from that too, right? We all have to be connected. So understanding, I think Anil touched on it, that an HCP visited a website, went to this webinar, saw and opened an efficacy content, something to that extent, where they can then go in and talk to their customer and know where they are. But it doesn't have to be big. You can start with small channels. You can start with what Anil showed: social media, website as your destination page, your field channels who are, like I said, are key to Omni.
Hmm. Guys,
All thinking about firewalls and compliance, of course. And I think Anil touched on that as well, because this is a regulated industry, and we need to get our compliance partners on board for how these channels are integrating and what data is being shared across channels.
indeed, engage with them early. Thank you, Dana. Well, this is a great discussion. Unfortunately, there's only 7 minutes of it left. So what I'm going to do is do one final poll question for everybody. This one is about scaling and sustaining, making it stick across our organizations. That will appear on your screen in just a second. I won't read it out this time. I'm sure you're used to the drill by now. Panel, I would like to just cover one more topic, which is about empowering teams with data and insights, not just having too much of it, but being able to use it as an empowerment as we go through the longer maturity of the product and make sure it's doing what it needs to do. And of course, what we're actually using as the key metrics during that time as well. What are we doing to ensure that measuring success or lack of in a hybrid space, in an omnichannel space, is made possible? So it's going to have to be quite succinct from each of you. Your top tips on ensuring that we measure, that we choose the right measurements, and that we empower with the metrics that we're seeing. Oh, go on, Dana.
I can jump in, and then I'm happy to hear from the rest of the panel as well. But I think understanding your KPIs or your objectives before you start to build, right? You can't build and create a strategy without then knowing what you need to see. So I think it really starts at the measurement plan, so that when you're building things and you're understanding the data, that you are able to activate that measurement plan. Otherwise, I've run into situations where, you know, people build a great strategy and then they go, well, how do we know if that worked? Did that work? What was our, how do we measure that? And it's like, oops, we forgot to do that in the beginning. So always start with the measurement plan first.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I could add to that, I think build on what Dana said. It's linked to the funnel, right? What do I mean? The proverbial sales funnel. And then make sure that your KPIs are connected in that funnel to the pull-through methodology that you're using. Whether it's boots on the ground, or whether it's a virtual rep capability that you build in. And then the third one is discipline. The ability to execute consistently so that insights are followed through. So I'll give you a very practical example in 30 seconds. We get leads and then we feed that lead to the field. I just found out that some of those leads are given without any context, meaning number of patients or office location or the propensity to prescribe based on past behaviors. So just for the sake of a KPI might not get you what you need.
Anil or Martin, would you like to come in on this?
Yeah, I think just one short comment. I think the key thing around your KPIs or measurement, I think maybe to build on what Dana was saying, you got to build it from scratch, and you got to build it at the beginning before you launch a tactics. What are you going to try to measure? How does it tie back to the brand's KPI in terms of metrics for sales or market share? So in terms of any programs that you do, you got to really tie the engagements back to how is it going to drive your results, and having the measurements and the data collection in place ahead allows you to be more proactive and track it properly.
Absolutely. Anil?
Yeah, I'm just going to talk what I covered earlier, and all the panelists are absolutely right. I think I'm also going to say the word of data collection discipline. I think collecting data puts a tremendous burden on the analyst, on the marketer, on the tool, and the technology. So I think having a discipline, why am I collecting this data? And how is this going to inform an actual KPI? And once you start doing that, it gives you a great framework when you're working with an internal tactic channel or an external partner on what's the basic data threshold that that tactic should meet, and what am I going to collect it, and what is it going to inform? So Nawan brought up a great point. So if we want to just give a lead without context, it'll go into the ether. The rep would not know what to do with it. But if we build the right context and going in, we know I'm going to collect a lead on Dr. HCP. And I'm also going to look at how Dr. Joe has engaged with me across. I may also look at the IQVIA data and say, what's the propensity? What's the size of the practice? What kind of ICD codes are they diagnosing? So that gives a little bit more context for the rep. And then going in, the rep can kind of sort of segment. So I think the data discipline, what you collect, needs to get tied back to an insight. And then how are you going to marry this data to eventually to the action, where it may be not the next best action, but any action. So the data discipline is a big one for me.
Okay. So guys, just a couple of minutes left. I'm going to give you one final task. You're only going to get a sentence each because of the time. And that is, what is the priority change? You know, you've all got a magic wand. What is the priority change that you'd like to see your own organization make in order to actually drive this? So this is a little bit personal now, and I realize you may not want to throw your organization under the bus here, but what is the change you would really like to see at your own organization to make this easier than it is right now? And that includes, by the way, you, Anil, you can speak across all of your clients as well. So you can see the results of the question, just to quickly show you that as well. Scale and sustaining, nearly half of people saying begin with a lean focus setup. So I think, Anil, you've been very convincing on that front. Well done. And then secondly, what do you believe is the most valuable ongoing HCP engagement through optimized digital and in-person touch points, getting again nearly half of the vote there. So very interesting. Right, final sentence each. What is the one thing that you're going to do? I'm just going to throw out a next steps poll question as well that you can do in the background while you hear this. Okay. Nobody, of course, wants to go first on this one, so I'm going to have to pick on Nuvan to go first, if that's all right.
May I give you 2 words? Sustained discipline.
Sustained discipline, 2 words, that's all he needs. I like it. Okay. Martin, over to you.
I'm going to say something in terms of organizational maturity. So how do we move from an earlier phase to more organized and yeah.
Okay, very nice. Dana, you're next.
Sure, I'm gonna kind of build off of that and say some cross-functional collaboration and alignment, really getting a team together and not building in silos.
Marvelous. So de-siloing the data as well. We remember you talking about at the beginning. Anil, you have the final word.
I have the final word, and I'm going to pick on everyone. It's a champion who can instill cross-functional collaboration, discipline, and drive the maturity forward.
Amazing. Well, that was very succinct, and you've managed to hit the top of the hour perfectly. Team, thank you so much for your ideas, energy, and willingness to share for the sake of our industry in general. I'd also, of course, like to say a huge thank you to our audience for being willing, particularly those of you who were active in the chat window. A massive shout out to Azentech and to Anil's team for being great people that we've been able to work with in assembling today's session and getting this topic finalized. Been really, really strong to work with. And thank you so much for some really interesting insights in the polls as well. I do, of course, wish you all fantastic luck. Not that you need it, because the expertise is here. And as Anil says, it's only your mindset. It's certainly not the technology that might be the barrier to making progress ahead of where we are today. Thank you so much, everyone. I won't let you be late for your next meeting. Really enjoyed having you today. We'll see you again very shortly. Got another very interesting session on Thursday coming up. But for now, really appreciate your time and good luck. And if you need more than luck, give Anil a call. He'll help you out. All right. Thanks so much, guys. We'll talk to you soon.